And I think this is a brilliant time now to bring in our resident psychologist, Sabina Read. Sabina, welcome as always on CR Live. Great to have you. This is incredible to hear just the depth of what Maddie's talking about there when it comes to PTSD. The bit I'm really interested in, because I mean, there's a heap of talk going on around mental health and the challenges that we're going to face. I'm also interested in this, almost the labeling, this PTSD component. Do you think that we are going to have a challenge with people that will have a post-traumatic stress disorder post-COVID-19? Is this going to be something that we should be kind of trying to look into the future of and preparing? And if that's the case, what do we need to do? I mean, we've heard some great stuff there from Maddie around decompression training and how the military do. What are the parallels there for us?
Wow, well, you've just thrown a few questions my way, Chris. So let's just start with a few stats around post-traumatic stress disorder. Approximately 12% of Aussies will experience PTSD over their lifetime. And 25% of people who are exposed to some kind of trauma, like the kind that Maddie's talking about, but there's so many other kinds. And as you say, COVID-19 is bringing those to the forefront for many people. 25% of people who are exposed to some kind of trauma will go on to develop post-traumatic stress disorder. So in answer to your question, we now have perhaps we can assume a much higher percentage of the Australian and global population being exposed to various traumas and serious and confronting challenges. And so if we think that 25% of them are going to convert to PTSD, it's very possible that we're going to see an increase in this condition in our population in Australia and beyond.
And I think that the question then is, with that recognizing and those stats there, I'm certainly going to be chatting shortly to Kate Carnell about the mental health implications. She was the CEO of Beyond Blue. She's the small business ombudsman now as well. What do we need to be doing to get ourselves in the best place possible? Because let's assume that this is not going to be something just this year around mental health. It's going to be a topic. This is going to be 2021 and 2022. How does business play a role in this? What role does government play in this? And where do we need to take some learnings?
I've got so many thoughts on this topic, and it's such a big one. I want to just reflect on one of my favourite longitudinal studies of resilience, which is really one of the things you and I and Maddie are talking about now. And it was a study that was conducted in Kauai, on the island of Hawaii. Many years ago, around 800 kids were studied by a woman called Emmy Werner. And why I think this is such potent research is it studied these kids for over 3 decades. Now, this was a very impoverished area. There was low socioeconomic status of these kids and families, low education, high unemployment. And she wanted to examine, why did some of these people come out the other end as resilient, thriving people, and others did not when they all started at this relatively low baseline? And a couple of things I think we can take from this study, including that the kids that went on to thrive as adults did a few things that I think we can all do. We can all do, as you say, as individuals, in our family units, in our workplaces, in government and beyond. One of the things they did is they thought that challenges, we're kind of going into the mindset phase now, they thought that challenges happened for them, not to them. That's the first thing that I think we can all be thinking, yes, we're in unprecedented times and the challenges are significant and real. What can we do in order to respond to help us grow and thrive? It sounds kind of trite, but this is what the research has been telling us for decades, that we have to listen. The other thing that these kids on the island of Kauai did is they found what they called a charismatic adult, but what we would call a mentor or a support or a guide or a leader or someone to help us. So with regards to mental health that we're talking about now, we're not expected to do it alone. We're not all mental health professionals. And so whether you're running a team, a business, a family, or yourself with a couple of canines in, to boot, you don't have to have all the answers. You need to be able to create a space that's safe enough for people to share authentically what they're dealing with. And then once you've been able to hear those stories and those challenges, then we can start to find a way to respond, because there are so many wonderful, rich resources in Australia to us available to help with mental health. So you don't need to have all the answers, but don't stick your head in the sand and do nothing.
Maddie, I can see you nodding away there to what Sabina's saying. What's your thoughts on the resources available and anything else with this?
Yeah, I think there are so many resources out there for people. Beyond Blue, for example, just one that people can go and reach out to. Most industries have their own support as well. So, for me, I think it's about getting some support early, talking about it. I think
Yeah.
what the military has been guilty of previously has been trying to sort of just to bunker down and not talk about the things that have cause people concern and keeping them awake at night. And I think the best thing we can do is open the lid on that, have those
Yeah.
conversations with supportive people, get the professional help in early, if it is something that is continuing to bother you, so you can get on the front foot of it. And I said, for me personally, it's those challenging environments that have actually been the biggest learning opportunities for me. So if you go back to fast roping out of helicopters, sort of facing my fear, being on the battlefield under fire, even losing my teammates in the Lebanon War and being injured myself and losing my career, as horrific and horrible as that period was, where I really hit rock bottom coming home and then also having to fight the government for war service recognition and health cover. All of those periods, though, now with distance and time to look back on them, those are the moments that have really defined me and shaped my character into a stronger person. So I think some of it is also perspective. And I also, often talk about purpose in these environments. When we're in that really dark period, the one thing that got me out of bed, and I had fractured and crushed 5 vertebrae when I was thrown into the bulletproof windscreen of my armoured vehicle during the war, and a number of other internal injuries. So that's what sort of led to the end of my military career. But, I was in a spinal brace for about a year. And the one thing that kind of got me to turn around from those dark, depressive days was actually doing something for somebody else. And my husband's a corporate marketing executive. And this one particular day, I decided I'd get up and actually iron him a business shirt before he went off to work. And that was a far stretch from, commanding soldiers on operations overseas and all the things that I'd done in my career up until that point, being a Navy diver and all sorts of things that I had considered as hard work. But that was my challenge for the day. And I just set these little steps that I could build on each day and also get a sense of achievement from that. I'd iron my shirt. I felt like I'd actually done something that helped somebody else. And so I think, often when I'm working with clients wanting to build that resilience after they've gone through a traumatic experience, is actually helping them just find some small step forward, because sometimes the whole picture looks insurmountable. But if we can break it down and do one small thing each day that we can build on, we can sort of find our way through and come out the other side.
And what a beautiful way to finish off that. But the last question goes to you, Sabina, as always. Last question here. Have a think about what is it that, if you're a small business owner now, you're looking into this little team you've got, you're trying to work out how to just even get from one day to the next. What's the final thought that you would leave for them around how to deal with the enormity of what's going on and how they can just make those steps forwards?
So first of all, I think it's not let's look at the enormity of what's going on. Let's break it down into bite-sized chunks, which Maddie's alluded to as well. And if I'm managing a team or a business, and I'm particularly thinking about the mental health of the people that work for me and with me, my number one takeaway there is to really look at observable, tangible changes from the way these people may have once behaved or expressed themselves to how they are now. Because if you notice that someone who was always punctual is now not punctual, or someone who was always chatty is now very withdrawn, it's those observable changes in behavior that we need to be really aware of. And it's a really good place to start a conversation with the people that work with us and for us, without feeling like you're diagnosing or attacking or criticizing or snooping, because I think so many people who run and work in businesses and teams as leaders think, this is not my business, I don't know how to start this conversation, so I'll just put my head down and hope that it kind of moves along. That's not going to happen. But if we're able to start a conversation with, hey, I kind of noticed that, you're not turning up punctually, obviously, to Zoom meetings, because we're not having face-to-face meetings at the moment. But, some kind of observable behavior change, that's a really good place to start the conversation. Is that what it's like for you? Have I got that right? How are you traveling? That's the beginning point as a manager, a leader, a business owner.